Hi everyone, welcome today to today's Facebook Live. We are having a chat with our EY technology leaders. Let me introduce myself first and then I'll hand this off to them to do a quick introduction and then we'll get started. I'm Hensi Bomnahal and I've been with EY for a little over 16 years now, and I am the business management leader for what we call the Client Technology Platform Engineering Group. So it is a mouthful. Srini, do you want to go next?
Thank you. I'm Srini. I lead what's called the Product Architecture and Technology Strategy function within Client Technology. I'm also the Chief Architect of EY. John?
Hi, I'm John Lawler. I lead our Client Technology Platform Group within our overall Client Technology team. So great to be talking to you guys today.
Great, and thank you for that. And I actually work with both these gentlemen on a daily basis. So I'm very honored and privileged to be here today. So both of them have been working outside of EY. Unlike me, I started my career here and I've been here since. So Srini, do you want to tell us a little bit about your career journey? How did you come to EY? What you did before?
How much time do you have?
30 seconds. How about that?
So I started a long time ago. Coming out of grad school, I finished a PhD doing mathematical sciences, designing jet engines. So I lost all my hair doing that. But after that, I swung from being an insanely technical guy to being a management consultant. And I think it was a fantastic start to the career because you began to see top-down how businesses work. But for a technologist to be a management consultant wasn't the greatest gig. So I started pulling the pendulum back to somewhere in the middle. So this is about the year 2000 when I came back into technology. And there's an e-com startup that I worked with, and .com boom goes bust. Got out of that and went into an iconic technology player, digital equipment. And they had a footprint in India. I worked with them for about a couple of years, and through acquisitions, it became HP. And then, so I spent about 10 years in digital HP. And after that, I thought I needed to get out of what's called classic IT services into what is called product engineering. And a wonderful opportunity opened up at Walmart Labs. And I joined them in Bangalore, helped set up that team and grow it. I did that for a period of time, so about 5 years, and then had the startup gig, or the bug bite me, and so off I went into a startup, which is very interesting in that we were trying to design cancer hospitals using data and mathematical modeling. So I did that for about a year until EY called. Sounded like a brilliant opportunity, so off I left that and I came here, and I've been here about a year now.
Wow, startup to EY.
Yes.
Quite a change, I would think.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Very good. And John, what about you?
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. So a long industry career before I came to EY. I've been in EY now since 2011. Before that, I was in HP. Actually, myself and Srini met really briefly in HP. We overlapped at a client early on in my career there, and I think just before you left HP, actually, Srini. And before that, I was in ExxonMobil for 8 years. Finally, in their upstream business. And before that in a couple of other industries. And I think moving out of industry into professional services has been a huge change. Through technology the whole time, I've always worked on the technology side. But working on technology at EY is completely different, I think, to directly industry roles.
Right. And in what way? Could you tell us a couple reasons why?
Well, it's a global partnership as opposed to a corporation, which is a different command and control model that you used to live in global corporations. EY isn't that way. There's a really strong sense of partnerships, a really strong sense of collaboration, and a real people agenda. I know we'll come on to talk about some of that here, some of the specifics of that, but it really is a differentiator for EY, I think.
Right.
Sure.
And that's a great segue because EY is a traditional accounting auditing firm, right? And now we're talking about technology, and we have technology folks who come in from all these large tech organizations into EY. So clearly something's going on at EY, right? So what is it, according to you, that's attracting all these technology folks?
You want to start?
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it's funny when you ask about it early on in my career, because I still have some folks that I worked with at Exxon, for example, ExxonMobil, who still, they still send messages saying, "Really, you're a technology guy? What are you doing over at EY?" Because they would have been much more kind of hardcore technology in the upstream business, and be much more mainstream for them. But really, we see, and as part of our Vision 2020 Plus, driving client technology into the heart of our business, and we see technology being consumed much more at the front end of the business. We see the service line business being, in the long term, disrupted by technology. And from an EY perspective, we really want to be at the heart of that. We want to be at the front end of that. So some of the specific technologies that we come on to talk to here, we really see those driving our business going forward. So we want that technology right at the front end. So we're starting to hire people at all levels. We're looking at graduate recruitment. We're looking at mid-career hiring. It's a really exciting time to be at EY because of the amount of change that's happening in the industry.
Right. And so what are some of the top 3 skills in technology that are really hot in the market at the moment?
From our standpoint, I'd recommend, think of product management as being a very big area, because that's one of the significant shifts we're making, moving away from traditional IT into the world of products, so that we enable our professional services arms to be far more effective in what they do. So product management with a strong sense of business, I think really up there. Product engineering, and again, all this is layered with the usual, blockchain, which is emerging, very significant in what we do. The deep learning, artificial intelligence, machine learning kind of spread, where we won't be able to learn from the business data that we get, so that we can help our professional services be that much more effective. That's the play that we're into. We're not into designing compilers or building, machines that somebody can use. It's about making our consultants, our professional services, arms and firms be that much more effective and relevant as business evolves. And business is evolving very rapidly now, as we can see it all around us.
Very good. Okay, and one of the things I think we have fewer women in technology than in our traditional professional services practices at EY. And I know we've debated about why and how do we increase women in the workforce, right? So what are some of the challenges you think women have entering something like technology or a STEM field in general?
That's a...
Well, it's a good. I mean, I have this. It's funny because I have this debate at home the whole time. I come from a family with 5 sisters, myself and my brother. My brother's an engineer, and our sisters are always talking to us about what our kids are going to do, what they're going to do themselves around this whole space. And I think we need to, and we do a lot of this at EY. We need to understand the balance between being able to balance your personal life with your professional life, being able to build the right career model to be able to support a personal and a professional career. I think having the right STEM skills is important. I think having the right way of thinking, and I think the flexibility that the organization needs to provide is also really important for you. I think some of the barriers are not having that kind of flexibility. I think you need to think about how you balance that life, how you want to balance your career going forward.
Right.
I think that's really important for us to do. It is a real challenge. I mean, it's no doubt, and we look at the numbers of the people that we're hiring, we're lower than we need to be, and we do need to significantly move that needle. And we know that it's really important for us to do that. We know that, when we look at the statistics for what we're hiring in the market, we've got a really simple way of looking at it, which is, and I actually heard this from somebody else. This isn't my own quote, but they said, how can you build? And we're all about building the best teams, right? We've got the best tax assurance advisory talent. We need the best technology teams to be working within these teams, within this business going forward. So we're all about building the right technology teams. You can't do it when you're looking at half the workforce. I mean, it's almost as simple as that. And so when we look at that challenge, we say, well, what can we do? And how do we do that? How do we, all these things about what do we do about our unconscious bias? What do we do about our hiring schedules? How do we make our workplace more flexible? All those kind of things I think we'll talk a little bit more about here. I think a lot of those are barriers. A lot of those are challenges to us that we need to overcome. And we need to solve that fundamental issue. We've got to be able to build the best teams for the business. We really have to commit to that.
Right, and I think we have data and stats today that proves that more diverse organizations have better market share, better revenue, have better everything. So that's bang on. I'd like to talk about flexibility at EY, since we've started to talk about that being one of the challenges. And I think we have a number of different policies that we offer. And I have been someone who's actually availed every single one of them, from a reduced work schedule to a changed work schedule to a compressed work week. And those were the needs that I had at every different phase in my life.
Yeah.
And I needed that. And I think I've been very lucky that I was at the right firm offering me those privileges. So as technology leaders, though, what are you guys doing to enable that for your teams to be able to embrace flexibility, and regardless of gender, that is?
So if I connect the 2 dots, the piece that John just spoke about, that you don't build the best teams just out of half the population, it becomes a really interesting problem, specifically in India, because if you go look at the STEM graduates or engineering college school graduates, you see that they're about 50-50. Well, if you go to a certain spectrum of the colleges, such as an IIT or a BITS, maybe you will start getting a slightly different skew to those numbers. But broadly, if you take the complete numbers, you've got a 50-50. And then if you look at the user base, the people who use technology, again, it's 50-50. And somewhere in between lies this engine, which is using those people to construct technology that is used by people, which seems to be incredibly skewed. And again, if you then target hiring out of campuses and other mechanisms of bringing them in, you do see that you can get a pretty good spread, which is 50-50. And I'm not suggesting 50-50 is the right answer, but that's how the population is built. So you possibly start seeing a very good spread there. But then you see a very rapid fall off. And the key hypothesis behind all this is because the systems, and by that I mean the environment, the work cultures, do not support people being able to invest the time in the career and therefore support all the other life ambitions that they have. That's where the flexibility becomes that much more centric. I think it's wonderful, and I love it, the fact that EY has this ability, it's got this culture, and in a sense, it's very nice that it's not a core tech company, because we have businesses, and businesses are very well represented on the gender and other forms of diversity. But I think how technology can leverage that to attract talent, which is far more well-rounded, and by that I just don't mean gender, but I also mean backgrounds and experiences, and therefore help us really build those teams of differences, I think is a key element. As leadership, I think all I can say is from everything I see around us, they're weighing in, they're leaning in, they're making it happen, they're supporting it. But in terms of how do we get the message out there, how do we get the people to come in, how do we kind of give them the runway to prove that we're actually right behind it all along, I think is the pieces we're trying to put in as a little puzzle, so to speak, over there. Everything we're doing, even as we try to hire, we're trying to make sure that the funnels, when you think of the hiring funnel of going through from leads into actual hires, is well represented. Otherwise, you tend to have a very skewed funnel because, my uncle knows somebody down the road, the guy who's looking for a job, and so bingo, it happens. And that then fails the entire initiative where the heart is there, but then, the muscle in the mind doesn't support it.
Right. Agreed. Sorry.
I was just going to say, there's a couple of specific initiatives around UI at work, for example, which gives us, really good collaboration space, so that when we're in the office, we'll make sure that we're collaborating together, we're in the right space. So we've gone away from, like individual cubicles or a lot of people sitting in offices to much more collaboration spaces, so that when we're together, that we're really able to work and build those really strong teams that we want to build. But then also we've got flexible working arrangements, which allow people, as you said, like compressed hours, or they can work from home quite a lot. And we've got some quite good collaboration tools around that now that allow folks to do that, and they're getting better all the time. We're able to, there was a time there a few years ago when, especially in India, people were saying, well, we don't have the infrastructure for people to work at home because you can't connect to the network or you can't collaborate with people around the world. Largely, there's some of that, little pockets of that, but largely that's not the case now. Most folks can, in large urban areas, are able to do that now, which is really good, and we're really seeing an uptake in those flexible working arrangements. So I think that's a really good thing too.
Very good. And as I think about how we ramp up our teams, as we add more women to our workforce, I think it's really important for us to focus on these things and talk more about them so they're aware. One of the questions that keeps coming up is women on career breaks, right? And how do they come back into the workforce? How do they come back and say, I've taken a break now, I'm ready to come back because I'm in a different phase of my life. So what kind of messages would you have for them to say, it's not easy, or is it easy for you to come back, and here's what you should be thinking about?
I'll say take the first job that you get.
Okay.
Just get out of home, get in there, because you're learning to now balance and rebalance an equation that's larger than what you left it at.
Right.
It doesn't mean you dilute your aspirations, but it means you need to test the waters, you need to understand how to make the whole thing work. And it's not just about getting away from home, but also having a support structure at home, which has got its own wonderful commercial implications about creating more jobs if you thought about it that way. Mm-hmm. But getting that whole structure set up becomes central to how you make it work. And you need to test the waters first. So just get out there, try it, and figure out how you make it work. Then the actual leaps can come. If that's assuming you didn't get your dream job on the very first offer. Well, if you didn't get it, doesn't matter. Get out, solve the problem of being able to get back into the workforce, and then you can kind of graduate that further. That would be my one submission into this. Rather than think about it, talk about it, just get out.
Just get on with it.
One thing I would say about it is I think people should think more about the expectations that they might have, or what they're sort of what they want out of a job going forward, and what sort of flexibility they want, what the balance they want between between their personal life and the professional life, and be open about that. That's not something I think that, women in particular should hide and say, well, I want to pretend I'm coming back full time and then struggle in the background. I mean, leaders, in our experience, and certainly ourselves, are very open to. I mean, we, as we're talking about today, we need women in the workforce, and in particular, we need women to come back to work after taking a career break or for whatever reason, and being open and challenging in some ways to say, here's what I need.
Right.
This is what I need in order to make my life work. I'm, highly talented, highly skilled. I want a strong career, but I've got these other things that I also want. And then we as leaders and collaboratively as a team, we need to work through those things. And I think that's, as Srini says, getting back into it, not overthinking it is really important. I think, but having, good thoughts and being really open with the team that you're working with, I think is also really important. Get that on the table.
The interesting element is we often tend to think of women as the only ones whose equations have changed after they've gone the family way. Well, the men should also be. They shouldn't be sitting at work 24 hours a day with a family back home. So you need to learn to balance it. It's not as if I'm there every day for my son, but that you have to travel. You've got your work beat. But the days you're back home, you spend more time at home, and it shouldn't be that there's a skewed ability to effort in your career. I think that's a false longer run. Life is about a marathon. It's not a sprint. So I honestly believe that everybody should spend.
That's a really interesting point about those high performing teams, because they're all elements that work together, and that open collaboration and honesty amongst them is absolutely key for everybody, as you say, for everybody who's part of those teams. And that's what we're all about at EY, is building those teams.
Okay. The one thing that I think is very challenging for women as they come back from career breaks is, especially with IT, is how fast-paced it is. So what's in today, 2 months from now is out and something else comes in. So how do women keep themselves sort of upskilled or reskill as they sort of take these breaks, or even when they're in the workforce, they're having to sort of, they have limited time. So how do they think about these skills differently?
I honestly believe in the Montessori model of learning things, which is where you have a mix of learners and seniors, and pretty much every team we construct has that. These skills evolve, as you rightly said, so rapidly that you often forget it. So you learn it on the job. Now, if you didn't know how to program but wanted to come into a high-tech programming team, it's going to be a chalk and cheese conversation there. But if you were a programmer, you've done some pretty good programming, but you're part of a new team where you haven't learned the technology, all it needs is a few hours at work. So the telecommuting option may not be your best bet as you get that started, but a very few days after that, you could very well be back to the other structures of how you work because you've learned the tricks of the trade. The best people to help you with are the kids sitting around you, and people sitting around you. So
your message back to just get back.
Just get back, start talking. And I think the point John made earlier, be honest about your entire spread and spectrum, about what your interests are, how you're motivated, and people will actually love and support you for that.
Right.
I also think it also depends on how long you've been out of the job market.
Right.
I mean, there may be, if you've been out sort of 5 or 10 years, for example, there may be some things that you'll need to learn. And I think, again, being open and honest about those things and saying, well, I do have some really good skills. I do have some really good, and certainly in things like the product management space and in how we're, at EY really trying to push our client technology into the heart of the business. If you have those kind of skills, but say you're lacking some of the more modern skills that we would have, say around, cloud and some of the things we're doing now, which would have come out since you've been out of the market, I wouldn't be afraid of those things. I wouldn't be afraid of them at all. I'd say, it's the training options to learn those things are available, in many different formats now. And again, it's back to the openness, it's back to the conversation, it's back to, what you're able to bring to the table, and the fact, but to what we're talking about overall today is, you're not pushing against an open door.
Right.
I mean, you really are. It's like we are so far behind where we need to be with women in the workplace, and in particular women coming back to work with a lot of those skills that we really need to be. And we are. And I think a lot of women will find those conversations a lot easier to have now around upskilling, around reskilling. Especially if we've been out of the market for quite a while.
Right. Very good. Okay. Let me just pause and see if there are any questions, Shonali, that we want to start taking.
Yeah. There's one. There are a few, but this one. How do you view a big gap in a career for a woman returning? How do you interview this woman, and what would you be looking for when she's coming back to work? If she has a larger gap, like 5 to 10 years. Not 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
So my thought would simply be find yourself, or even as a team, if I was interviewing people, I'd find slots that do not set them up for failure. You find slots, roles, contributions that set them up for success. And every team has variations of it. It's insane to expect that teams will always be performing 110%. Everybody's got a bad day, they've got a bad month, somebody at home is ill. There's a whole variation that's always happening, and knowing well where to fit them up for success. So, and then you have those quick guardrails around it to understand whether it's something that supports you or something that maybe you're still not ready for. So I think it's that try before you commit yourself to a far more longer, effort, percentage of time or form of work becomes really the part. So I think as long as both going to the point John made earlier, open and honest about it, I think everybody knows how to settle that.
Right.
And I think we're all looking for such.
Yeah. I mean, myself and Srini have the privilege of building a technology team within EY, specifically to target what we're talking about today, is bringing technology into the heart of our business. And one of the things we're finding is just simply the lack of pipeline that we have, and people just aren't available. So one thing I would say to people, especially folks who have been out of the market for a little bit longer, is have some confidence in your own ability and have the conversation. Start talking to the recruiters, start talking to the people within EY. If you believe you've got relevant skills, and get into the conversation with us, because what we're finding really is that we're just not seeing people at all. Now, whether that's through for whatever reason, I would encourage folks to, think about it and say, well, if you believe you've got something to add and you believe that there is a gap and you need to do some training, come and have the conversation with us.
Lindsay, this question is for you.
Sure.
As a woman who came back to work, how do you manage your day at work, let's say, but from the beginning, from when you wake up to when you get back?
Okay, so I've always been in the workforce. I did have, I took sort of a break in the sense that it wasn't a full schedule maybe. So I did a shorter schedule, I did, flexible work, and I said maybe I'd do half a day, for example, for at least a couple of years in my life, right? And what my day looks like is insane, but I do have a solid support system. I will not deny that. It's to the point Srini made as well. I have my in-laws, I have my mom around, who are very, very supportive of my work life. I have a husband who also works at EY, extremely supportive. So I do have a solid support system that I can lean on for my kids and make sure that, they're being cared for while I go and change the world. That was his work.
What, according to you, are the two most standout qualities that a woman returnee brings to the table, coming from a break?
So we'll take one each, Srini, shall we?
That's good.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think the primary quality that we look for is attitude in people. Having the right attitude, everything else you can more or less teach. And I'm not from, obviously, the ground up, but, especially for women returning to work. I think having the right attitude, having the right positivity towards the environment, and being able to work in that high-performing team, I think that's. And we look, that's not an attribute that we would just look for people returning to work. I think the thing that we look for the most in the high-performing teams that we're building is really having that right collaborative attitude towards the team, and it's what we look for the most.
I would possibly say empathy and maybe a problem-solving skill kind of a mode, because somebody who's returning back to the work, after several years, they've fundamentally gone through a life-changing event, kids or whatever it was, and that life-changing events also made them change, and it's changed their perspectives. So when you come into a team, and let's assume there are a whole bunch of college grads in there are a whole bunch of seniors in there, that view makes you even think about how you do work, what is work, how do you create systems, or all that. So and I think and having said that, the end user base which is out there, which is using technology that we create, has had such events all through their life. So it's absolutely appropriate that those views emerge and come into the team itself. So to me, just the fact that they've gone through that, they've dealt with it, they have come out successful, and they've made up their mind to the point John just made, had the right attitude to come back to work, I think is the biggest feedback, and so therefore the sense of empathy and how this solve problems.
The one thing I will add to that is I think as women, and there's tons of literature on this these days where, women need to have done something to feel like they can actually come and do something or be successful at it, while men will tell you that 30% in, they're going to be like, of course we're going to be super good at this and do it. I just think women need to just take the challenge and say, we're going to do this, right? And come in and be able to do that, and not constantly question your own skills. So if you're thinking about coming back to the workforce, I think that is my message, to say, just get on with it, get into the workforce, figure it out. There is tons of support around at all times. Just believe in yourself just a little bit, and I think everything sort of falls into place after that.
Yeah, if you look at the sign behind us, pursuing innovation, it's a big deal for us at EY, pursuing innovation. We talk a lot about putting technology at the heart of our business, and innovation is at the front end of that. And for innovation to happen, we need people who can think differently about things, who can solve problems in a different way. And guess what? In order to be able to do that, you need all sorts of different people in the organization. And like we're talking about here, we need women to come back into the workforce and come into the workforce in general in order for us to be able to do those things. So I think it's really important, as you say, don't underestimate what you've got to contribute. It's not all about STEM skills. It's not, some of it is, obviously we've got some of those engineering things that we need to be able to do. A lot of it is about how people think. And some of the things that Srini's saying here, about you're saying, I think, some folks might underestimate what they might contribute to that, and it's a huge amount.
One last question. What are the top 3 areas that women coming back to work in STEM should focus on reskilling in while they're on a break right now? You can think of.
If you go 3-1 each, I'd say first analytics, being able to run analytics. So if you've forgotten how to use Excel, get it back up there. That's 101 version of it. Then if you can put your hands on some of the more deep analytic tools so that you can kind of start looking at data and kind of helping decision making, that'll be tremendous. Because that's, when you think of product management, you think of all those elements, it's the ability to run analytics that becomes central to that. So I think brush that up, and that's easy to do. There are enough courses online, there's enough literature sitting out there, and that's not something that changes every day. It's that insights, and that insight that you bring, the changed insight, if I may, is really going to leverage piggybacking off this of the skill that you have.
Yeah, I think it also depends on what kind of background you have. If you have been in development and you're looking at some of the more sort of modern scripting languages that we might use around some of the AI things, around say Python or something like that, then that might be a path that you might want to go down and say, well, I need to learn some of those later skills. If you believe that it's more, I think example that you gave earlier on about product management, for example, Srini, I think that kind of skills and understanding how product management works, the whole product management life cycle, and simply how different that is to how we run projects. So you made a reference earlier on to your own career where you moved out of IT and into a more, and I think understanding that change, understanding what a product management mindset is, what a life cycle is in that space, is fundamentally different to people that might have been brought up in an IT world where they're doing kind of traditional IT development type things. I think reskilling in those kind of areas would be really strong. I think data as well is a big deal for us. We're essentially a data company globally. The amount of data that we hold. So data skills are really important. The point you make about analytics is a really good one. But more generally then about how we manage large volumes of data, how we take that in, how we manage that, and then how we present that. I think those kind of skills are really important for us as well.
Fantastic. I wrap?
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.